thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America, and we're delighted today to have with us Dr. Sarah Lewis, Harvard professor of art history and architecture and African American studies, a former curator at the Modern and at the Tate Museums, the author of the groundbreaking, you can tell this resume here is going, the groundbreaking book, The Rise, Creativity, the Gift of Failure and the Search for Mastery, and also the guest editor of the newsmaking edition of Aperture magazine titled Vision and Justice, which just sold an amazing $20,000 copies. I hope $20,000 too, but 20,000 copies, which is unheard of.
Yeah, in 7 weeks.
In 7 weeks, so it's gone into reprint. So people who, will hear you talking about this and want to rush out and get a copy will still have a chance to.
Indeed.
To do that. But such an incredible assignment to have. Talk to us a little bit about that, how that came about.
Sure. Well, first, thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, the work you do is phenomenal. So
I just love reading your introduction. All of these things that you've done in this brief span of time.
Oh.
But go ahead.
You're too kind. I feel as if I've done nothing and I have much more to do, which is really.
I'm sure about that. Sure about that.
But the Vision and Justice Project is a large part of that. So the first course I'm teaching at Harvard is on this same topic of vision and justice, looking at the way in which art and citizenship has allowed us to be more inclusive in terms of who we consider to be a citizen in this country. The Aperture magazine is the really leading photography journal for the United States. It's had a storied, long history. It's very important for photographers, but by their own admission, they haven't focused very much on African American photography. They invited me to guest edit an issue of the magazine, and the request was to focus on African American photography, but I wanted this to be a bit more precise and specific. So I chose this theme of vision and justice. It's an issue that is both historic and contemporary, spans from the work of Frederick Douglass to the current day, with contemporary photographers like Carrie Mae Weems and Deborah Willis and Dawoud Bey, who maybe we'll speak about. Fantastic writers from Henry Louis Gates to Claudia Rankine, many others, and it was just an honor to be able to create this collection that allows us to celebrate really the beauty and dignity and honor in Black life as shown through these images.
Yeah, and it's incredible. You have two covers for it, which is also very interesting.
Yes.
The one that we're looking at now, which is this young one. Who was the photographer for that? So talk to us about what you wanted to capture with the two photographers and the two images.
So this image here is by Awal Arezku, who's a former student of mine at Yale's MFA program, in fact, and he's an LA-based Ethiopian photographer who's just creating incredible work. This is one of the portraits that was commissioned by Vogue, in fact, for the Afro Punk Festival. But I wanted to include it because it, for me, captures a lot of the power and of the sort of millennial generation, in a sense, and the way in which images are used to assert a sense of a new identity, ultimately. But I didn't feel that it was synoptic of the entire issue, because as I mentioned, it has a really broad chronological sweep. And so we chose a second image as well.
And this is the three generations of Martin Luther King.
That's right, yeah.
His father and one of his son, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Which is wonderful.
I think this is Avedon being masterful as always in composing this portrait. You see him with his father and his son, but what I love is that direct gaze, looking straight at us, placing us in this conversation about not just pictures, but what it means to have vision, right, for America's progress.
And I read, I think it might have been in that huge New York Times, those, like, how many pages of the New York Times did you have when they were talking about?
That's a lot.
a lot, that there were a lot of people who didn't know that this photograph existed.
That's right. Well, Dawoud Bey, in fact, brought this image to my attention. So the great photographer Dawoud Bey, of course he did, through Facebook of all things, and I saw it and thought, I must be the only art historian who doesn't know of this image. But I sent it around, and I think one out of maybe 20, 30 knew of this image, probably for many different reasons. But I think once you look at it, you can't forget that you have seen it. So it felt as if it was a way to signal the historic foundations of the issue. And Awal Arezku's contemporary portrait, I think, offered a way to signal that this is also about today.
Right, exactly. Now, I was at the Ford Foundation introduction for this and ran around saying, there's Carrie Mae Weems, there's Deborah Willis, everybody. It was so packed with our elite artists of the time now how did that come about? Well, I know that part of it is that they all write or their work is in this edition. Night, I was sitting next to your parents, as a matter of fact, and I kept giving the elbow. I said, she's fantastic, she's wonderful.
Oh, you're too kind. Well, they are incredible. I'm so fortunate to have them as my parents. I'm grateful that Darren Walker offered to co-host that
President
evening.
of the Ford Foundation, right?
Indeed. The celebration came about, and it's unusual, I think, to have a celebration of that kind of magnitude for an issue, because over time, Michael Famighetti, the editor-in-chief of Aperture, and Chris Boot, the head of the foundation, and I were so stunned, but not surprised, by how much importance people granted to the issue in the form of dropping obligations so that they could finish an essay to submit it, despite having a full schedule, that we thought this is something to really celebrate this moment. And your viewers will maybe know some of the other contributors. I mean, we have everyone in this issue, and
let's take a look at Henry Louis Gates, a Harvard professor, talking about Frederick Douglass. I didn't know that Frederick Douglass was the most photographed person of the 19th century.
Yes. Henry Louis Gates has an extraordinary essay that I was so fortunate Aperture allowed us to reprint, and I should say I asked to do this because it had already come out as an essay in John Stauffer's, another Harvard professor's, edited volume on Frederick Douglass.
Right.
But I didn't think that enough people saw it,
right.
And I wanted to be part of this conversation, so we trimmed it down. He's really allowing us to see what I've written about as well in The Rise, which is that as much as Frederick Douglass is known as this powerful orator who really is also a man of letters, he was prescient in his understanding about the role of pictures for America's progress. He was the most photographed American man, and deliberately so, because he understood, as David Brooks, really of all journalists, put it in the New York Times.
Wrote just recently on August 2nd, he has a whole column about Frederick Douglass.
And the deliberate reframing that he hoped his figure in front of the lens would do for America's vision of African Americans. He was, one of the most, as President Lincoln put it, one of the most meritorious men, if not the most meritorious man in the United States. That's what our president said about this man.
Well, and the first photograph was taken when he was 23, and he was 78 when he died. 160 photographs tracking this, a wonderful, historic person. What I love about him is that he was also a feminist, hung out with the suffragettes.
On the last day of his life, he was leaving to deliver a speech.
Exactly.
To support the suffragettes.
Right, with the suffragettes, right?
That's right.
So one of the things that you say about this edition is understanding the relationship of race and the quest for full citizenship in this country requires an advanced state of visual literacy. So we have cameras now that are taking pictures of lots of things happening to the disadvantaged people of color in this country. And mostly cameras in their phones now that are revealing what is happening. But this whole idea that you have to see yourself represented in a certain way for there to be a certain full citizenship even.
It's crucial. I think often we look at images as a way to capture the recent past, or to allow us to reflect on something that has happened. But today we're seeing the importance of images for getting us to understand our present moment. To your point, we're also dealing with, I think, image saturation, because these images can be disseminated virally so quickly. But the reason also why I think Douglass is key for this is that he wasn't simply looking at the importance of a picture, but in his speech, he was looking at what he called thought pictures. The way these images create what he called a really picture gallery in our own minds. The way in which we use these images, we then carry around about each other to then filter the world, which is very much what's at work when we look at these images of social injustice and oftentimes police brutality. There are images that are being used to filter what's in front of you. So it's not just a physical image that he was talking about, but the phenomenology of a picture. He was ultimately an art historian, really.
Exactly. He's done in Aperture. He has some of the pictures from the Birmingham Project, which was the 1963 bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church, where 4 little girls lost their lives. He did talk to us a little bit about this side by side image that he did.
Such a powerful series. So Daoud Bey, extraordinary vision as a photographer, had the idea to consider the lives of those 4 girls who were lost in the 1963 bombing. And so he selected residents from Birmingham and placed them side by side, child and adult, with a direct frontal gaze to allow us to consider what could have been with these lives, right? And of course, to allow us to consider the impact of history on the present moment. He's also, I think, masterfully paired the children and the adults, because there is, despite lack of, genetic relationship, a way in which he's used sort of physiognomy and characteristics to connect them in his sort of curatorial project there. So we were able to include a set of those diptychs in the issue.
They're absolutely striking. And Lorna Simpson has something they call "Can Birmingham Negroes Win the Civil Rights Fight?" A wonderful photograph of.
She has many images from Jet magazine, and that she sort of spliced together with these great headlines from the magazine as well. Margot Jefferson offered us, I think, just a beautiful, exuberant sort of encomium to Lorna Simpson's work, which she read at the Ford Foundation.
Right.
And
all of it breathtaking. The interesting too, you have photos of President Obama and his family and what that means. What we've seen of that family in the last 8 years and how it's changed our perception of ourselves.
Yes, yeah. Maurice Berger wrote a great piece, and we have many images, including those from White House photographer Pete Souza, who's, I think, offered us probably one of the most powerful images of the presidency, to my mind. And it's the image many people might know of the young boy, African-American boy in the Oval Office who wanted to know if his hair felt the same way that the president's hair did. So Obama leans down to offer him a touch. That image I thought was so arresting. We have those images, many others. But he very much is an extension of Douglas's investment in the role of photography for not just political life, but for citizenship. So it was important, I thought, to have Obama's image there. I should say, when Pete Souza received a copy of the issue, he said, "I'm hand-delivering this to the president." We certainly hope he did.
I'm sure
it's such an honor.
I'm sure the president is ordering some of those new 20,000 copies too for the presidential library.
One can hope.
In 2014, your book, The Rise, called The Gift of Failure. An interesting book for you to write about, and I love learning that it was probably an extension of your college admission essay that you started working on. Talk to us a little bit about this, because it's this whole idea of failure and mastery and how you get through it.
Yeah. So this book as a labor of love, it came out of my interest in just this whole story of how it is that we really become. How it is that we become our fullest self. As a young Black girl growing up here in New York City, I didn't always see models for who I wanted to become that looked like me. So I aggregated these stories that populate the book in The Rise, not knowing I was really writing a book over the last 20 years. People like Martin Luther King or J.K. Rowling, many different athletes who all had these unusual foundations for their rises, ultimately. So it came about through just genuine interest, but then when I became a curator and was in artist studios, I would see how they were able to transform and gain irreplaceable benefits from so-called failure,
From so-called failure.
So-called.
I love the Elizabeth Murray story where she, put the picture out on the sidewalk because she thought it was horrible, and one of her neighbors rescued it.
Exactly.
So it's this concept, but this was a huge success. You were on Charlie Rose and all of the late night talk shows, and you did a TED Talk. I want to play a little bit of that, talking about mastery. Let's take a look.
Mastery is in the reaching, not the arriving. It's in constantly wanting to close that gap between where you are and where you want to be. Mastery is about sacrificing for your craft and not for the sake of crafting your career.
So, 2 million people have looked at this video of you talking about failure, mastery, success when it comes, and people would look at you and they would say, "Well, you never had a failure in your short life. You have all of these credentials." So, what did you experience that wanted to make you write this book
Yeah. Well,
personally?
sure, no. It's not a memoir, but it certainly is inspired by the fact that I'm not alone in sharing, which is that if people look at me, say walking down the street, they might look at me and not consider that I do what I do or that I am who I am, right? And it's not to say they're looking at me as if I am a failure, but there certainly is a gap oftentimes between what I actually do in the world and who they might expect me to be.
Yeah, I want to read this quote, from the book. In hindsight, I realized I was focused on improbable rises because I was beginning to live with the gift, as you call it, of what it means to be underestimated. What happens when the world often assumes, before you've even uttered a word, that you could be a failure, which is what happens so often.
Exactly, exactly. I say this to another colleague of mine who's also a professor at Harvard. When we're having lunch, I say, what are the odds that people look at us and think that we're professors at Harvard, sitting
Right.
here talking
Precisely.
about our courses,
Well, you
Probably.
could, I mean, and
Maybe.
yes.
But on an average coffee shop here in Manhattan, probably not. And it's 2016, so the gift of that improbable foundation really had personal resonance for me. I should say, though, that writing it, or the decision to write it, was something that I cloaked for a long time. In the same way that I cloaked this essay that I wrote as a 18-year-old to apply to Harvard about the gift of failure, I didn't tell many people that I was writing this book. I think actually because of I think just being a young black woman, it's just not common to talk about failure publicly. And I realized in the course of writing it that I wasn't doing that. I was looking instead at the way in which people are able to glean something extraordinary from something, quite improbable. And that hopefully has benefit for all of us.
So it was your college admission essay that you said you didn't show to your parents because you were sure that they would say, "Oh, that's not going to work."
Exactly.
But then later you ran into a professor who remembered it and you and his own experience with that.
It was extraordinary. I was writing the book, I had finished a couple of chapters, and Harvard now has a success failure project in the Office of Career Services. And they had a panel, which I attended, and I was stunned to find that the dean of Harvard College Admissions was there speaking about his own so-called failure, being expelled from high school. He then developed the resilience that he said he needed, which he looks for in applicants, and he applied to high school in the neighboring town, succeeded. And when I went up to him after the event, he looked at my name tag and year, and he said, "I remember your essay."
Extra, and you say now it's or soon it will be a bestseller, and I'll be on all the talk shows, and 2 million people will be listening to me looking for advice. So what is I know you talk a lot about grit, you talk a lot about, because so many people will encounter this barrier and not make it to the success level. They will be shunted off. In fact, I had a taxi driver who said to me, I only had 10 credits to go before I graduated from college, but I walked away I didn't even know for what reason. And I think about it every single day that I'm driving this cab, that I could have had a college degree.
Yeah. Well, again, I struggled with the word because failure is not right for what I was really describing in terms of the improbable. It's closer to what you just brought up, which is the near win.
Near win.
Which is what the TED Talk is about. So yes, there are other characteristics I focus on that people develop. You see a lot of grit. You see the power of surrender, which is not quitting, but really giving over to something larger.
What's that? What's that like? What's a surrender? Say, you're going to take the day off, or
no? Let's think of it.
Surrender.
Yeah, I'll give you an example in the context of a, I think, powerful story. So one of the things that animated me enough to write the book was seeing Martin Luther King's transcript. I was stunned to see that in a transcript in seminary of A's and B's, he received 2 C's in, guess what class?
What?
Seminary and public speaking. or homiletics, I think it's called.
Right, homiletics.
And in fact, it was a C plus and then a C the following semester. And I thought, oh my goodness, what must this teacher have thought when he went on to lead the nation with the power of his spoken truth? But he then developed a speech impediment, which Harry Belafonte noticed. And in an interview with him, he described how surrender ultimately allowed him to overcome it. When Harry Belafonte asked what allowed him to get rid of it, he said, I lost my fear of death ultimately. And once I lost that, the fear of everything else just went away, as did that tick.
It's amazing.
That's surrender ultimately. It is spiritual. It is about not giving up on yourself, but about giving over to something much larger. And I think that oftentimes gives people the fortitude and power that they need.
So how did you become Sarah Lewis, the Harvard professor? What were your influences? I know you talk about your grandfather a lot.
Yes. He's a strong influence. So my interest in the arts really did stem from seeing my grandfather, who really spent his daytime hours as a janitor. But in the evenings, he was working as a painter and a jazz musician. He's playing backup with Count Basie and Duke Ellington. And
I love his name, Shadrach Lee. Right, that's such a great jazz name,
isn't it? Shadrach Emanuel Lee, and I have his initials, but my name is much less cool than Shadrach Emanuel Lee. He's my maternal grandfather. So he animated my interest in this because he was deliberate about putting into the genre scenes he would create images of African Americans where he hoped to find us. And it just got me to think about the arts not as a respite from life, but as central to it, for citizenship, really.
But he had a life where he challenged what was in the curriculum. Why were there no African Americans in high school, right?
Exactly. And I knew this from a young age. He grew up in New York City, went to public school here, and in the 11th grade was expelled for the impertinence at the time in the 1930s to ask where African Americans were in the history books, and for not taking the answer he was given as acceptable, which was that we had done nothing to merit inclusion.
That's what he was told.
That's what he was told.
Right.
He refused to accept that, was expelled, and his pride was so wounded he never went back.
So he left high school and then became a wonderful artist.
He did. And I feel very much in his lineage to now be here as a professor at Harvard teaching the very topic that he was told ultimately was invalid.
And that you are working to include it.
Exactly.
We always ask our guests to tell us, finish this sentence, the strength, the power of Black America lies in. What would you say?
The strength and power of Black America lies in our continual ability to honor the dignity and fullness of human life. That's what I would say.
And for you coming up next, I know I hate to ask this because I know it's like 1,000 things. You've got a book.
I do. Yeah, under contract with Harvard University Press. And that book looks at this nexus of race and image making in the 19th century. I have an exhibition opening and up at Harvard Art Museums, and it goes through January on the same theme of vision and justice. 3 courses for the academic year coming up, and very excited to call Cambridge my second new home.
Your new home.
Yeah.
So the exhibit at Harvard and Cambridge is going to be Vision and Justice.
Yes.
And but you have also more plans for that afterwards as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
I do. So that show really showcases, I think, the unique gift of that museum, which is to really be a teaching gallery, for the students. And so that show will be a collection-based exhibition, smaller than the Aperture issue, but will then break for a few years, maybe 2, I think, and we'll then relaunch that show with kind of a fuller checklist, a larger checklist, and tour that around the United States.
So that will be fantastic. So I'm curious about your grandfather. Did he?
Sure.
What did he see of your success? How old was he when he when he passed away, and what did he know about his granddaughter who was going to take his success to the limit?
Well, I should say I'm really grateful that my parents took me down to see him in Virginia so much for vacations and holidays. He passed when I was young, so he didn't know that my path would take me in this direction. I don't think he knew that I would become an author, professor, but he did know that I was an artist, which I still am. I don't talk about it, but I do paint, I do create. Sure. And he saw his hand in my hand. He saw his work in the works of mine that my mother would show him. And apparently the last thing he said about me before he died was he looked at a painting of mine. It gets me so emotional to talk about it. He looked at a painting of mine and he said, I think she's got it.
Oh, that is wonderful. What a moment. What a moment.
So I think he's here.
He's here.
Yeah.
He's here. That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such an emotional, I mean, when you've got it and when you can actually help others, you know, with their work, because you've analyzed, you've critiqued the work of so many artists and writers that, and you can tell them when they've got it too.
Well, thank you. That is the work. The work is ultimately to give a platform to the incredible gifts of these extraordinary poets and writers and artists and photographers that I could feature in Aperture. And it was
Here it is. Here it is. It's fantastic. Go out and get your copy as soon as it's back on.
Thank you.
Well, I'm so pleased for everything, you know, but this moment with your grandfather is just terrific. I want to thank you so much for being on Black America and for bringing us your work. We look forward to the next book, but right now Aperture is out, and also The Rise, talking about the near win, failure, how we get to that next point of success. And thank you so much for joining us today, too. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America.